Hello and welcome to The Joy of Writing. I'm your host, Mark Carew. In this series I will be talking to authors about the fun, the satisfaction, the joy they get from writing novels. Today I'm talking again with Sally Harris, author of Haverscroft, to find out what advice she would give to aspiring writers, and also to learn about a book that was formative in her own writerly education.
Sally, sometimes writers, being rather mythical and wondrous beasts, are asked by wannabe writers, how do you do it? What advice do you have for me starting out? What would you say?
There would be lots of things, really. There wouldn't be one thing. I think it's a mishmash of all sorts of things that you do to bring it together. One of the first things I did, or probably was the first thing, was I took a course. I live in Norwich, so I was very lucky to be near the UEA. And back when I was looking at things, they did evening courses, 2 hours on a Wednesday night for an academic term. So I did that, and that has a number of aspects really that help you, because you do sit there and someone does tell you about character and setting and structure and all of those things that perhaps you may know, but it's quite good anyway just to get a look at it again if you're starting from fresh. But you meet other writers, and that's always helpful. And if you get stuck, you've got a tutor or the other writers to ask. So I would say take a course. I know now they can be quite expensive, because back then it wasn't too bad. But there's also lots of help on the internet. So when I get stuck or bored, I will just scoot across various websites and podcasts like this that I follow. And you just listening to other writers chat, reading what they're doing, what they say, is really helpful, because it's a strange thing, and it's a very long-winded thing. So I suppose I'd say get help, really, is one of the main help.
Yes, I'd agree with that. I did the same. One of the very first things I did starting out was I did an evening course. It was run by the local, I don't know what they call it, but I remember it was such a buzz to sit in the room and realise you were so much enjoying this. And one of our first exercises was to write about an inanimate object.
Right. Yeah.
So I was writing this sort of rather steamy drama about a lime and a lemon in a fruit bowl. And I just remember the surge of adrenaline as I was thinking, this is really great fun. And of course, it was probably all a little bit silly what I was doing, but certainly getting into it in that way is really good advice.
Yeah. Well, I went on then to do, there was a gap, but then I went to Norfolk Adult Education, used to run really good courses.
Yes.
And I met the two tutors through that really I've stuck with. They're friends now, but they've been absolutely key. So if I hadn't done those courses, then I wouldn't have met those tutors either. So
you've got to get it. I think adult education was the word I was scrambling for. And it is good to realise that it might just be a little bit of going back to school for many aspiring writers who maybe come from it. I mean, I came from it from outside any kind of creative writing background, and I'm sure most people might do as well. So definitely, and just get into it and get to see other writers and talk to them and see how they do it. Can you remember any top tips from your course that about characters or setting or structure?
Top tips for that. I mean, that we would have writing exercises, and we had to put work in each week, which would make you think if this character is going to have to work for a class of people. We would have odd things like you would have to, I remember particularly having to write a paragraph with words with only 2 syllables in it.
Right.
And I'm sure that was about a character as well. And it just really makes you think in a different way to that. Perhaps if you just sit down yourself and off you go trying to write something, it makes you approach it in an entirely different way. We've done multiple times all the lists of the characters, what their hair colour is, what flavoured jam they like, that. And to some extent, I do find those things helpful. I usually apply it to the main character or the characters I'm writing about at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But more than anything, I think it is just doing lots of different exercises so that you gradually have a wider range of skills to bring to the writing when you actually sit down and do it on your own.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's interesting what you say about writing just using 2 syllables. It reminds me of the Oulipo, if that's how it's pronounced. The French movement was all mathematicians and writers who came up with these ideas to write with constraints. So, for example, you can write a book, as someone did, Georges Perec, I think, without using the letter E.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah. And there's other ones as well, and I've tried that sort of thing just for fun, and I wrote a little poem in Pylish, which is to follow the mathematical constant pi, 3.1415, etc., recurring. Well, it doesn't recur; it just goes on endlessly, and you use that to guide the number of letters in the words that come consecutively in your composition.
Goodness me! Right.
Well, yeah, this might be a case of I don't know, too much time on your hands or something, but I mean, certainly that does widen your skill base and gets you thinking about words and possibilities. So, yeah, I think that is a good idea. You've got to exercise, you've got to practice your craft in any way you like.
And the more different ways you come to it. I mean, certainly the 2 tutors have very different approaches, entirely different, and I think that's helpful as well. And those 2 groups have there is some overlap with people that attend, but then there are different people there as well. And the approach that people have to your writing, it's different. Some people will rave about it, and other people you can just see on their faces that was the most boring thing I've read in a long time.
Well, they'll say it nicely.
They say it nicely.
They'll be polite, yeah.
And I think that's what I'd say about writing groups is if it's a good group, it will tell you in a constructive way what's not working. And that, for me, is vital, because I will write a piece, much as I did last week, and I put it through, and I was fairly confident that it was quite well written, and on many levels it was working. But I couldn't myself see what wasn't working. So there was one bit where it just wasn't clear that what was happening for anyone that was reading it. And you get all of that feedback as to what they take away from that piece of work.
Yes.
And if that's going to work as you need it to work, either in a short story or a longer piece like a novel.
So you've had some good experiences with writing groups, and you'd recommend trying to find one, I suppose.
I definitely would. I think I've probably been quite lucky with that from what I've heard from other writers. Probably sort of choose with care, really, but I think I just happened to hit on 2 purely by luck that worked very, very well. But I think you'll know, certainly the one that I went to at Norfolk Adult Education, I sat down and you're incredibly nervous, or at least I was when I first went to them. And the tutor was just very chilled, very relaxed, but it was clear she knew what she was talking about.
Yes.
The group were friendly. There was no one there that seemed to have, a strange take on life or anything. So, and it just worked. It's always worked. And I would find it quite a lonely business without that each week. But from a social point of view, I've got a lot of friends out of it as well that I wouldn't have met.
Yeah.
Because everybody says how lonely writing is, and it is when you sit down at your keyboard just to tap away, but there is that other side of it as well.
You're quite right about that. I mean, it's such a funny thing to do. So many people want to do it, and yet when you read maybe advice from writers, they do remind you writing is the most lonely, awful thing you can possibly inflict on yourself. Why would you do it? The top line of advice would be don't do this, and yet everybody wants to do it. It's quite strange.
It is odd, and people say, well, why do you keep doing it? Because I am quite an out, well, not when we're in lockdown, but out and about social person. But I like my time to myself, and I can't just sit and look at the wall. And I don't know why I can't read all the time. A lot of people, I'm sure, would be happy doing that. I have to do this creative side of it. I've always got these stories whizzing round in my head, and I got to an age where I needed to put them down on the page.
Yeah, I think some people, writers obviously, they do have the urge just to create something. Maybe they've had enough of taking in all the stimulus, all the ideas, images from elsewhere. Now they think, well, now it's my turn. I need to make something and put it on the windowsill and look at it, or plant my flag in the sand and say, here we go. How about this? I think that must be a big urge. We're going to talk about a book that you regard as a favourite, one that you were influenced by and you loved, I think at first read in this case, and it's a classic.
It is, yeah.
What did you choose?
I went entirely out of my genre and went for Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. After a lot of humming and hawing, so I tried to go with a ghost story, something by Susan Hill or Michelle Paver, and I've loved their stuff and still do. But as I was explaining to you, that was a book that I was handed at school. I was doing A-level English Lit, and it was the summer between year 1 and 2. And as we left the class, the teacher bopped me on the head with his copy and said, "Sally, read it, you will enjoy it." Because I think he knew full well I'd got other plans to be doing all summer. And towards the end of the holiday, I then did sit down and read it. And right from the first page, I was just enthralled, really, by her characters. The conversations, and they're so different and it's very vibrant. And I don't know how many times I've read it since, and I've seen the BBC adaptation lots of times. And it doesn't ever, I don't ever tire of it. And it's clearly got longevity, because it was sort of 1800s when she wrote it. So if I wrote something now that was still being read in 100, 200 years' time, obviously I wouldn't know about it, but I'd be pretty chuffed to think that might be a possibility.
Absolutely.
So
you find something new every time you read it?
I do, yeah. Which is, I haven't read it now probably for about 10 years, but I absolutely guarantee if I sat down and read it, I would read it with a different eye. Now I've written my own book, had a book published, I'm sure I would read it in a different way and get something from it. And I think I admire the fact that she just wrote it in bits and pieces. There was no cutting and pasting. It was just all having to write it out by hand. I can't imagine how you get that finished.
No, I mean, it is very interesting how it all happens. I mean, I don't know how the book came about. Was it heavily revised? Did it all come out in essentially one draft with editing? How it was ever worked? But some people are lucky enough to be able to just deliver and just draw from the well of inspiration and deliver the goods. And maybe that was the case. I don't know. I'd have to have a look into it. When you get on to, have you been in a position where you need to recommend it to kids, for example, or anyone else? I mean, obviously it's your favourite book. You would say this would be great, and somebody might be the right recipient for that. Or do you have any other ideas for what would be good for children to read?
I mean, with the Pride and Prejudice, I've had a copy here, and I've left it around.
Yeah.
It spent a long time in my daughter's bedroom, but certainly she didn't read all of it. I think that the best result I've had is with the BBC adaptation. I was watching or re-watching it one evening, quite late one evening,
Yes.
and our eldest son came in, who's a gamer. By that point, he would have been about 16, and said, "What's this rubbish you're watching?" And he sat down and started watching it, and we just watched the whole thing from start to finish. I don't know how many hours it is, something like 6 or 7 hours. So we finished quite early hours of the morning, and he really enjoyed it, and I thought, well, that's a win.
That is definitely a win.
He would never read the book. He's just not a reader. So who have I recommended it to? Close friends, my mum, things like that. Whether they go on and read it, I don't know, because the language is a little bit old-fashioned.
Right.
I can get past it quite quickly, I think, because I've read it before, but it doesn't trouble me. But I can imagine that a modern reader would look at it and think, oh, it's a bit like doing Shakespeare or Dickens. Why can't I just go and read Lee Childs or somebody easier? But I suppose a lot of people have also seen the films or the TV adaptations as well, once you get to something that's that much a classic, really.
Yes, people must have watched it in many forms, probably read it less, I would think, in its original form. It's like Shakespeare, though, isn't it? It's, Shakespeare is admittedly a tougher read in the original, but if you see a film adaptation or go to the theatre or read commentary on it, then it does get a lot easier to understand and approach.
Yeah.
And even though it is, of course, outside your genre, do you find anything creeping in, any influence on how to treat characters or describe setting and that type of thing?
I think it's probably that universal thing, really. Her characters work so well for me and in her story. And even though I'm writing in a different genre, the characters, particularly in Havenscroft, it's set, I suppose, in a similar way. Actually, not thought of that before, but it's set in a village. So it's quite a small world that Havenscroft is set in the same way it is in Pride and Prejudice. So you've got that mixture of people all living quite close to one another, all either getting on or not getting on. And that's, for me, what makes a story work, is the characters and also the setting. I mean, setting is very key. Setting something like Havenscroft. But yeah, so I think you can take a lot from it. I do try and read quite widely, so I won't just read ghost stories. I'll read all sorts of things. And I would say that I get something from me and from my writing from anything I read.
Yes, I think, as you go on in this writing path and read lots of things, you have a much deeper appreciation for how authors have done it in the past, and for classics, how they've held their longevity is quite incredible. Yeah, so that it is a good thing to do. I mean, you do have to read to be able to write, and read all sorts of things. So maybe it did unconsciously do something.
I'm sure it did. I can't see that it couldn't have done, really, because it's something that I've liked so much for so long. I'm sure I picked up unconsciously a huge amount from her. Dialogue is my big thing. I really like writing dialogue, and hers is really sharp, really witty. So I'm sure I picked up a lot from her.
Yeah, well, it's good to know. I mean, there are reasons to approach these things, and maybe if it wasn't a hit in the early years, although it was for you, I mean, for other people, come back to it. I mean, I was science-based at school, and Shakespeare didn't mean too much to me, although I do remember Merchant of Venice. That was good. Midsummer Night's Dream, which is a funny one. But something like Macbeth left me cold until recently. I took the family out to see a production of it, and we mugged up on it big time because it's a GCSE set text, and now it made loads of sense.
Yeah.
So it was very, very interesting to see how such a long-lived story still had something to say, and the way it was done.
I think that's what I admire with them, really, and it also shows us probably that, way back then in Shakespeare's time or Austen's time, we were all much the same, with the same worries and foibles and faults as we have now.
This is true, and maybe you can teach old people new things, or you need to be at a certain age to come back to something that you struggled with when you were younger. It's fascinating business. It's the universal power of storytelling. Excellent, thank you so much. That goes to the top of my towering and toppling books to read pile, which I haven't managed to do yet. I think I did a lot of science when I was young, and all these classics remain to be discovered. But thanks very much, Sally.
Next episode, I talk to Amanthi Harris, author of Beautiful Place, an engaging account of life in Sri Lanka, told from many angles.